Hey everyone. So yeah, I wanted to get a little bit of a little bit of content out for you guys today, and also there's going to be some content uploaded for a week from today, because of course after today, depending on the time frame, things are going to be changing for the next 2 months up until the 18th of August. If you guys that have been following my channel kind of understand what I'm saying. But anyway, I wanted to come on here and I wanted to talk about something that has gotten people riled up, and it's causing them to, I wouldn't say lash out, but kind of troll, maybe criticize people like JD, JD from NY206 of Off the Script and Tuesday Night Titans and such, as well as others like Hill Jesse, Chi-Town Mark, people like Alex, Just Alex, and Solomonster, and so on, Greg Morgan, you name it. A lot of people have been getting on them about the fact that this past Monday, or not Monday, but this past Wednesday on Dynamite, the closing segment, as far as I know, was, or one of the closing segments, at least for the Dynamite portion, was Kenny Omega and Okada, Koshishko Okada, I can't pronounce his name, I don't know why, but Okada and Omega signing a contract for the match at All In Texas on July 12th. And that's a noon whistle in the background. But anyway, people were getting on JD and others like him for criticizing the name, because what they did during this contract signing is they revealed the new championship that's going to be a visual and physical representation of the merging of Okada's Continental Championship and Omega's International Championship. And the name they came up with for this championship was the Unified Championship. And people like JD and Just Alex and Solomonster and Greg Morgan and others were very critical about this. They felt like, you could have came up with a better name. JD, among others, felt like the best solution is just to merge, the inter part of the international title and the continental part, or basically the continental overall part, if you will, of Okada's title, just merge them together and make it the AEW Intercontinental Championship. And in hindsight, that does make sense. It does make sense. But they didn't do that. And there were other names I'm sure people were thinking about that would have been more sensible to name this new title, which is a merging of both championships, instead of just giving it the word unified. People, I'm sure, have come up with the idea that you could have called it the Global Championship, or you could have called it the All-In Championship, or you could have called it this, or you could have called it that. Anything but unified. But I think there's a reason why Tony Khan didn't go with what would be, in the eyes of people like JD and Greg Morgan, and Solomonster and Alex and all of them, and even Meltzer and I'm sure and Alvarez and Sean Rossap probably feel the same way. They're just not going to straight out say it. The reason I think Tony Khan did not want to go with the most logical name choice, which was Intercontinental title, I think it's because of the fact that he still has this huge resentment towards WWE. It's not just the AEW fan base, if you will, excuse me. It's not just the AEW fan base or the sickos or the diehards or the casual fans and all that favor AEW more so than WWE. It's Tony himself. Tony has basically made it publicly known that he is not fond of WWE in any circumstances, especially what they're trying to do to him from a booking standpoint and such, and the criticization that he and the talent have been getting sometimes for, being part of the company. I mean, Ospreay basically, was criticized by Triple H for not, wanting to be part of the grind and everything. Ricochet has pretty much taken shots at WWE, which gave him a platform to be a tag champ, an Intercontinental champ, a U.S. champ, a North American champ. He's taking pot shots at them because they didn't give him the platform to really be who he's becoming in AEW, and such. And look, you're going to have a divide no matter what. You're going to want to support the home team that you feel is doing a better job, visually over the competition more so than anything. But, here's the thing. It's because of those issues that Tony Khan takes precedence with, that he's not going to basically say, yeah, Intercontinental title sounds better than just unified title. He's not going to want to stoop himself to that level from his point of view, because again, from his point of view and the fan base's point of view and some of the roster's point of view, by naming it the AEW Intercontinental title instead of giving it the name the unified title, which they have, is mainly I'm getting a little tongue tied here, but mainly it would be basically giving credit to WWE. And it would be another way of fans saying, look, AEW is just trying to be WWE, and he wants to be different. And here's the thing, as crazy as this sounds, I totally understand not wanting to be, similar in name when it comes to your championships. I understand that. The only similarity you should have is your women's world title and your AEW world title. The only difference in name is the company, that's in front of it. You got WWE women's title, WWE women's world title, and with AEW, you got AEW women's world title. Just like with TNA, you have the TNA Knockouts women's title, and so on. Or in MLW, you got the women's bantamweight title or featherweight title, whatever they call it. The point is the only difference sometimes, besides maybe the structure of what it represents for the women or the men. The only difference is the company's logo in front of it, or the company's name in front of it, and that's it. And that's a fact. That's a true fact, and I don't think anybody would deny that. But but here's the thing: it's not nothing new. It's not nothing new for another company to have their own interpretation of an Intercontinental Championship. There have been a lot of mid-major promotions throughout the decades that have done this, even some very notable ones. But the reason you don't always see it all the time, like on a high national level, is because it would be giving credit from that promoter's eyes, and even that roster's eyes, and that fan base that's behind them's eyes, their point of view, it would be giving credit to the WWE, or it would be giving credit to, at the time, WCW. That's what it would be doing. That's what it would be doing. I mean, this is why basically, instead of WCW, rebranding the United States title for a more modern audience back in the 90s and maybe even late 80s, but mostly 90s, early 2000s, into being the Intercontinental title or something similar in that vein, the reason they kept it the U.S. title, the reason they kept it that way, is it basically meant the same stature, like, contendership-wise, where you ranked and were looked at from a performer, maybe world championship caliber perspective. But the reason they didn't do it is because not only did it have a long lineage, before it, basically dating back to like the 60s, 70s, 50s, and all that. But also the reason they wouldn't even consider doing it, even though probably people suggested it, was because of the fact that it would be making them seem like they're trying to be WWE, and they didn't want that. They still wanted to establish themselves with their own identity. The thing is with AEW, when you look at it from, Tony Khan's perspective, and like I say, his roster and fans' perspective, it's the same way. Yes, name-wise and logically, combining the Inter with the Continental name and making it the Intercontinental title, yeah, it makes more sense. It makes more logical sense to go that route. But again, it would be giving, from Tony's point of view and the fan base's point of view, and even some of the roster's point of view, it would be giving WWE credit for coming up with that name, because they're the ones that came up with that name in that fictional tournament, if you will, where Pat Patterson became the first Intercontinental Champion, when they stated fictionally in San Juan he had combined the North American and South American championships into that. So even though that fictionally, that makes, that kind of has some storyline sense fictionally as to how the Intercontinental belt came to be, the point is AEW doesn't want to have to basically, this time legitimately have to credit WWE, but, for, them having their own Intercontinental title, if that makes any sense. They don't want to basically say, yeah, one of the biggest matches we're going to have on one of the biggest stages we're going to have in our 6-year history is going to result in us creating our own Intercontinental title. No, they want to have a championship in, from their point of view that, basically highlights the likes of Omega and, highlights the likes of Omega and Okada on being not only on that world championship caliber level, but basically, in their minds, legitimately in front of the world, would say, hey, this championship is not only, the second tier title, our championship now, our new official championship that makes whoever wears it the rightful and true #1 contender and challenger to the world title, but it also puts whoever wears it on that level of this person could become the next world champion. And that's why you're having it presented the way it is. That's why you're having it presented the way it is, because representatively, whoever unifies them basically gets put on that same pedestal as whoever the world champion is, Moxley or Page, after All In. And thus it signals to whoever that champion is in story that, hey, this person just unified 2 championships into one. And oh, by the way, that puts them on the same level as you, Moxley. It puts them on the same level as you, Page. And by the way, they could be the one that before the end of the year takes the world title off you. Now, as far as them keeping the Continental Classic, that's fine. Go ahead and do that. But I think what they should do is make it more for a trophy, if you will, as well as maybe, since Tony likes to do this, make it to where the winner, to where the winner gets to choose the championship they challenge for, and not just for a direct shot at the unified title or the world title. Give them the shot to give them the opportunity to choose who they challenge for. But if you want to make it a little interesting, make them, give them the choice to choose who they challenge for, championship wise. Do they want to challenge for the unified or the world? Give them that choice. Or maybe, again, if you just want to make it directly to where the winner gets a shot at the world title, that's fine. Or the winner gets a shot at the unified title, that's fine. But if you just make it to where but if you just keep this Continental Classic to the point to where basically the unified champion, whoever it is a part of it, and thus for a brief period has to vacate the championship, then what sense is there in unifying them if you're going to do that? It doesn't make any sense. So to me, if you're going to use the Continental Classic to, elevate somebody in the future, as well as give them a title shot, then yes, give that person the opportunity to challenge for the unified title, and whoever the champion is, whether it's Okada, Omega, or somebody else, at one of your pay-per-views, or basically you let them choose, or let them have a shot at the world title, again, whatever pay-per-view you choose to have it done at, or you give them that choice, like I said earlier, to choose at whatever championship they want to challenge for. But if you want to make it more interesting, make it to where it's more exclusive, like, hey, you want to challenge for the unified title or for the world title, it's up to you. So, they could do it either way, but if you're going to keep the Continental Classic, to me, they should not basically have it similar to what they've had before, to where the champion briefly gives up their championship, with the illusion that they may not make it out of that tournament, make it out of the tournament with an opportunity to retain, and we get a new champion. I mean, the concept sounds interesting in hindsight, don't get me wrong, but again, I think you need to use that tournament to basically allow whoever the winner is to challenge for the unified title or the world title, or give them that choice of both, in my opinion. So I think that's what they should do. I think that's what they should do. In all honest opinion. But again, I'm not calling the shots, Tony is. But, to get back as to why they didn't go down the logical route of, hey, let's make it the Intercontinental Championship or the Global Championship or the All-In Championship and just call it unified. Again, the most logical direction, name-wise, would have been Intercontinental. I'm not denying that. But the reason Tony didn't do it is because of what everybody has pointed out. And it's not just, a fan, it's not just a conspiracy theory in this. It's not just speculating. It's not just from what we're hearing other fans talking about, the sickos, the diehards, the casual AEW fans that favor WWE, or favor AEW, I should say, over WWE. But it's also legitimately, in my opinion, from Tony Khan himself and the roster. that if you go and decide, hey, let's make this our Intercontinental Championship and name it that, you would essentially, in hindsight, be giving credit to WWE. And thus, in hindsight, you'd be basically getting a lot more criticism as trying to be WWE light when you're trying to be something different. And basically, I think that's why again, I feel they're not going that direction, and they're going the unified route, because the unified route is basically more of their way of saying, yeah, this is our U.S. title, this is our Intercontinental title, and everything, but we're not calling it that. We're calling it unified. We're basically saying that whoever's doing this is going to unify, and they're going to be on that same platform and level as the world title, or the world champion, basically sending a message of whoever the world champion is after All In Texas, whoever becomes the unified champion is capable of winning that world title. And that's another worriness as well that fans have, as well as those that have talked about it and given their critical opinions about it. Basically what you're doing by creating this unified championship is, in their minds, and they have a right to believe this, is you're essentially covering for your own mistake by constantly keeping the world championship with Moxley and us not visually seeing the belt. And thus, by us not visually seeing the belt and you constantly keeping the belt on Moxley, what you're essentially doing by creating this unified title is you're basically, in a very pseudo but very not so subtle way, you're essentially basically saying, hey, this is our new world championship, since our current world champion, who has creative freedom, has creative control, and somewhat has final say in what, happens in the ring. Our current world champion doesn't want to visually come out with the belt, and they want to go with the storyline of, hey, you don't need to see the belt to know you're the rightful champion, or whatever the case may be. So, again, a lot of people feel that the reason this is happening is because Tony basically is making up, or at least trying to visually, even though he's not letting it on, visually trying to make up for the mistake he made, like letting Moxley constantly keep the championship around his, not his waist, but in this briefcase, quote unquote, this briefcase that Marina Shafir's carrying around, on a constant basis, and just constantly preach about, we're trying to bring AEW back to what it was, and you don't need to see the championship visually and all that to know that, hey, I'm the champ or anything, or you should be the champ. It's like to them, Tony Khan is trying to cover his own backside because of because of this decision he constantly keeps going down. Another reason people feel like this is, Tony's way of, hey, of coming out and saying, hey, we do have a world champion, we're just calling it unified, and all that, with either Okada or Omega. The reason, fans feel that Tony's doing this as well, is not just because of the fact that he's constantly booking, Moxley to, do this a lot, or allowing Moxley to book himself and those he's associated with to do this storyline and all that, which is pretty much run its course. Let's be honest, it has. But also fans are worried that the way you've been given this contract signing, the aftermath of it, and all that, the presentation of the unified championship, of what the two belts will become and everything. What worries folks is the way you've been, pushing, the way Tony Khan actually has been pushing this matchup for months, from Omega handing the Continental Championship to Okada with the All In Texas, LED banner in the background. What worries people about Tony Khan, basically making this basically the pseudo world championship now, outside of the legitimate world championship, is the way this has been built up for so long, in its own subtle way, is what worries people is that the actual world championship between Hangman Adam Page and Jon Moxley is not going to main event. And by it not main eventing, it basically means that if it's like in the middle of the show or even before the unified title or the unified match, that's usually a bad sign that Moxley's going to retain. And a lot of fans, even those that are critical, don't want this. Even Meltzer and Alvarez, who have been the strongest AEW supporters since the beginning, don't want that. Sean Ross Sapp, who many would say is in the pocket sometimes of AEW and doesn't want to come out and be legitimately truthful and tell it like it is, even he doesn't want that. Even Andrew Baydella, who tweeted to JD, I should say, and saying, "Hey, isn't this what you wanted?" And JD's like, "Yeah, but I just don't. It's the name doesn't make sense, and all that." Even Andrew Baydella wouldn't want that. What doesn't want that either. The point is, to go back to what I was saying, what makes fans feel that, and those that criticize this decision feel like this is just a pseudo world championship match being presented the way it has in such a big manner, is that, this feels like it's going to close out the show. Well, the world championship is either going to be in the middle or the second to last match, or the match before it. They're signaling that Moxley's going to retain. And again, that's not a good sign, and they want anything but that. I mean, if the match order is reversed, and Okada and Omega are second to last or in the middle of the show, and Moxley's match with Page is the last match, then hey, that pretty much will ease people's worry, their concern. But again, you can't blame people for feeling that way when it comes to this and the way it's been built up between the two. You can't. And the fact that it's being promoted as the first time this match is going to happen on American soil, you add that again to the way it's been, played out throughout the past 6-8 months, hinted at, and now pretty much official. It's like you can't blame people for feeling that this is going to close out the show, and just by doing so, it's going to basically put the world title before it or in the middle of the show, and thus that would indicate Moxley's going to retain. And again, fans don't want that. Fans don't want that, whatsoever. And again, you can't blame fans for feeling the way they do. You can't. You can't blame them for feeling that way. But again, to go back to what I said in closing, the reason fans are critical about the name, and justifiably so, is because it was such an easy decision to just take the part of the International Championship and take the Continental part, if you will, of the Continental title and merge them together as the Intercontinental Championship. Yeah, it makes sense. Or you could have gone and called it the Global Championship. Or you could have called it, the All-In Championship. Heck, you could have called it the X Division Championship, if you will. Kind of your way of saying, hey, we have our own X Division or whatever. Because there are promotions, tied to TNA, or not tied to TNA, or not so, I should say, that have their own X Division title. And like I said, in the past and even currently, there are minor promotions, international promotions, that have their own version of the Intercontinental Championship, named the Intercontinental Championship. So it's nothing new. But again, the reason Tony doesn't want to do it, and again, it's not just him, but, from a point of view perspective, it's probably the roster, as well as it's the fans, that if you call it the Intercontinental title, you'd basically be giving credit to WWE, and basically from a critical standpoint, you'd be in their eyes, especially the AEW diehards and sickos and casual fans that prefer AEW over WWE more so, you'd be not only giving credit to WWE for the name, but again, you'd be showcasing that you're trying to be WWE light, in which you're not, and that's why I think he's going with the unified title. And as much credit as I don't want to give Tony Khan, I don't think anybody else wants to give Tony Khan. I think in a way he knows it's a dumb idea, it's a dumb name, but he doesn't want to admit it, because if he admits it, then again, he'd be giving credit from his point of view to WWE that, yeah, Intercontinental might have been more sensible, or going with one of the other title names would have been more sensible, and that's it. But again, I'm not Tony Khan, at all, but I think from a critical perspective, fans could pretty much say that this is, or believe, the unified name is basically in response to not wanting to give WWE credit for the Intercontinental name. But even though there are, or have been and currently are, other promotions internationally and within North America, mid or small or whatever, that have their own version of the Intercontinental title. So again, I think it's more along the lines of basically it's this disdain Tony has, along with the roster, along with, along with the fan base that they have with WWE, that they don't want to give WWE any credit whatsoever, even though there have been other championships, that carry that same name. And again, in closing, the reason fans feel like this is also being just presented as a pseudo world championship, a stand-in world championship, is the way the match the match is being promoted and presented between Omega and Okada, and the fact that it's being done for the first time on U.S. soil and so on and so forth. Fans basically, like I said before, and I'll say in closing, the reason they feel it's being presented this way, it's it makes them believe, and rightfully so, and justifiably so, that this is going to close out the show based on all of that, and thus by doing so, it's going to knock the world title, the actual world title match between Hangman Adam Page and Jon Moxley, to being before it or in the middle, thus signifying, based on what they've seen in the past, that Moxley's going to retain, and they don't want that. They don't want that whatsoever. So, yeah, look, I don't. So, yeah, look, in closing, I understand where fans are coming from. I do. I understand how they feel about the whole situation. I do. On both sides of the spectrum, I understand where fans are coming from when they feel like, hey, this, by Tony doing this, it doesn't, it basically still keeps them as an alternative, and it doesn't make them like WWE and all that, or WWE Light and all that, and everything. But I can also understand from the fans' perspective of, the solution, the name solution for the title was so easy. It was right there, and yet you didn't take it because of this disdain, this hatred you have for WWE and Triple H and all them. That instead of going with the easy route, which was making it Intercontinental title, you decide to make it the unified title, which again to some fans doesn't make any sense. And then again, I can understand from both perspectives why there is a excitement and why there's a worriness that this is going to main event the show. The excitement is, hey, it's the first time American fans are going to be able to see this match live and in person between Okada and Omega, based off what they've heard and seen visually on, screen from the matches in Japan. Now they're going to get to see it live and in person for themselves. The excitement is there, and the unifying of these two titles makes it, justifiably the main event, the rightful match to close out the show. But on the other hand, you have the fans, that basically feel like, not only is this, being presented as a pseudo world championship and this being presented as a pseudo world title, but also they feel the same way that, this match is being set up to not only close out the show, but the difference between excitement, like the other fans have, the excitement's not there, and it's more replaced with worriness. And that worriness is not only will this main event the show, but it will cause the world title, the actual world title match, to essentially, basically, be the second match before it, or be placed in the middle, and thus end in the same result they have seen for the past several months, and that's Jon Moxley retaining, and they don't want that. So, again, I can understand both sides of the spectrum when it comes to this AEW Unified Championship situation, when it comes to Omega and Okada, and the naming of the belt and everything as well, and both both sides of the fan base feeling different ways. But look, if I will agree with one side on one thing, I will say that the Intercontinental name was right there. It was easy to do. Heck, I'll even say calling it the Global Championship or the All In Championship or the X Division Championship would have been more appropriate, if you will, than just unified. I will admit that. But again, it's more of a pride thing with Tony and the company and the roster and the fans and all that, to not want to be like WWE or anybody else. And they want to try to still be different, even though that, trying to be different perspective went out the window long ago. So if I was to side with one thing, I will side with the fact that the name could have been better. It could have been better. But again, I do understand the excitement. Like, this is something you've always saw only take place in Japan. Now you're getting it in front of you at Global Life, in front of you in your own country and all that. And, I understand the excitement. Now you're going to get to see this match in person and see if it lives up to the hype that, lives up to the stature and the hype the other matches before then, basically placed have placed, if you will, the bar they've set, if you will. So again, I can understand both perspectives, but again, if I'm going to lean in one direction just a bit, I think it's more along the lines of the name situation. The name could have been better and more suitable than just unified, because by calling it unified, you're essentially justifying, you know, what a lot of fans are being critical about, and that is you're making it a pseudo world championship, and that's not usually a good sign in my opinion, you know, because again, you're making this your pseudo world championship where your actual world championship is going to be, you know, regulated, or not regulated, but it's going to be demoted to a second tier title in the eyes of a lot of folks, especially if you make it the second to last match, if you make it the match before this, or put it in the middle of the show, you know. So that's something that Tony Khan needs to avoid. And if he doesn't want people to think that, he needs to put the world title as the main event, the one that closes out, and not, you know, the unified belt between Okada and Omega. But those are just my thoughts, guys. Let me know how you feel about the whole situation. Comment down below, like the video, ring the bell for notifications, subscribe to the channel, share the video, click on the links in the comment section, not the comments, but in the description box to help me out. Also, check out my content outside of YouTube, if you will. But guys, give me your thoughts on the whole situation. Do you see it from both? Do you see it from both fans' perspective and all that? Do you agree with one side but also agree with another? Let me know. Love to hear from each and every one of you on this situation. And until next time, I am out.